97.3 ESPN presents The Sports Bash with Mike Gill. It's time for Football at 4 with Geoff Mosher.
I think our track record in the last 20 years, how many NFC East titles, playoff appearances, and appearances in the NFC Championship game, those are some of the metrics I look at, and I'll compare our record with almost anybody.
Powered by the Inside the Birds podcast. Now, live from inside the Matt Black Kia Studios. This is Football at 4.
Here we go. Football at 4, powered by the Inside the Birds podcast, and of course brought to you locally by Dr. Lyle M. Back for everything from skincare to cosmetic surgery. Go to iloveLyleBack.com or call 856-MAKEOVER for Dr. Lyle M. Back, proud sponsor of Football at 4. There he is, Geoff Mosher from the Inside the Birds podcast, which dropped this morning with a lot of intel on the Eagles coaching staff. The defensive coordinator, Jonathan Gannon, he was hired over the weekend. Today they have hired an offensive coordinator with his, which is Shane Stryker, and he is coming from he is coming from the Los Angeles Chargers. Now, I guess the one question that everybody will find out, Moshe, when they have a press conference, whenever that is, will Sirianni call his own plays, or do they anticipate that the offensive coordinator will call plays? Maybe that's why they couldn't get a guy who was a little bit more veteran. I don't know, that whole dynamic. I guess we won't find out until Sirianni speaks.
Yeah, I really look forward to hearing Nick Sirianni speak and Jeffrey Lurie. I mentioned this in the podcast. This was not the kind of hire that I think we all thought Jeffrey was going to make going into the search. You know, we had heard about the Mike Kafkas, the Lincoln Rileys, and then eventually the Josh McDaniels, and all those three kind of fit that category of someone who's considered either innovative himself, like Lincoln Riley, or guys like Kafka and McDaniels who come from programs that have had offensive innovation out in Kansas City and New England. And here's a guy in Nick Sirianni who comes from a Colts team that has performed well on the field, especially when they had Andrew Luck and Phillip Rivers, but it's not like anything they do has really lit the NFL on fire as far as scheme innovation. So in some respects, Jeffrey did not chase a scheme with this hire, and he went with a guy who is an offensive coordinator who did not call plays. And I do look forward to hearing about what Sirianni's plan is. I imagine he's going to call plays, but you never know. We'll see. Usually these guys who get that opportunity at least want that shot first time around.
Yeah, I mean, you figure that you get into coaching because you want to – what did Doug say? Hey, it's fun calling plays. I like doing it. You get into coaching because you want to do that. To completely skip over that step for Sirianni, who went from an offensive coordinator who didn't call plays to then head coach and then never get to call plays, I would anticipate that his plan is to do that. So I don't know what kind of impact – when you're an offensive coordinator and you do not call plays, what kind of role or impact does that coach then have?
Yeah, that's a good question. And you know, I can't pretend to know every single system and how they do it, but in general, in talking with people around the league on how that works, if you're an offensive coordinator who does not call plays, a lot of times you're responsible for taking all the information that your offensive staff has as far as play designs or areas that you want to attack the opponent, things of that nature, playbook stuff, and kind of piece it all together and then decide, you know, it's almost like you're the filter, right? You're going to take the best ideas that you've got and present them to the head coach, and maybe whittle out some things that may not work on a specific week. You're kind of like the main organizer, but there's also responsibilities that the offensive coordinator may have that's germane to just himself. In other words, he could be responsible for third down offense while someone else is responsible for red zone plays, while someone else is responsible for, you know, other situational type of football on the staff. That's how it was with Frank Reich and with John DeFilippo for Doug Peterson. It escapes my mind. One of them was responsible for third down. The other was responsible for red zone.
Since he's so young at age 39, is it surprising to you that they didn't go with maybe a veteran guy, either Anthony Lynn, Jim Caldwell, Marvin Lewis, someone that just has a little bit more veteran in them, and they kind of went in a different direction with all young guys?
Yeah, he seemed to choose familiarity over experience. There's no doubt about it. I think that's a fair question. And I think that just makes you less, as a fan or as a media observer, a little less knowledgeable about what exactly you're getting. Like with certain guys, let's say it's a Jim Caldwell or somebody else who you've seen in action before, you know what their history is, you know what schemes they're going to favor or prefer, then that gives you an idea of what they might do. It may not help you, determine whether or not they're going to be successful or not, and neither is not knowing about these guys going to help you determine whether or not they're going to be successful. But it just means you're a little bit more left into the dark on what these guys really are, what they do, what they prefer. And so that actually makes it kind of intriguing, Hunter, right? I mean, you're really going into this thing kind of in the situation where you have a lot to learn about these guys.
So what about, one of the things to me that I find interesting is the fact that Sirianni has been both a wide receiver coach and a quarterback coach. So you're getting a guy like, I'm very interested to see. There's been so many different wide receiver coaches here. And if that's something that we see a big jump in, the development of a guy like Rieger, can they utilize him like they had T.Y. Hilton a couple of years ago? He wasn't great this past year. I think that had a lot to do with Rivers' inability to maybe push the ball down the field. But with luck, he was really good. And also a guy like Fulgham. I find that Fulgham's going to be a fascinating training camp story.
I think Fulgham will be a really interesting story, but I think you were hitting it on the head with Jalen Reagor in that what I have found in my research, and I'm sure other people have seen it too, there's a video of Nick Sirianni kind of breaking down a couple of plays that he was when he was with the Colts, and it was other teams. The Eagles were one of the teams that he broke down. He broke down the Zach Ertz go-ahead touchdown in the Super Bowl on why he likes 12 personnel and how that can help you with matchups. But in that, he also showed a play from San Diego with Tyrell Williams, and he made the statement that his goal, his objective is to try to get the ball in the hands of his most dynamic and fastest playmakers within 5 to 10 yards of scrimmage. And what he wound up showing was a formation where you have a 1-by-3 with the 3 on the right side, all running verticals, which kind of cleared out the defense. And then Tyrell Williams as the X just coming across the field with wide open space because everybody else is defending the deep vertical passes. And he was able to, get the ball on maybe a 5 to 7 yard catch and then turn upfield and get more yards. So if that's really his objective, that's really good for Jalen Reagor as far as becoming a more focal point in the offense. And remember last year, one of our big criticisms with Doug Peterson was that everything was so vertical. Your offensive line can't block. Your quarterback is struggling, and then you're calling plays constantly to get the ball down the field when you have those elements going against you. But it sounds like Nick Sirianni will be a little bit more devoted to mixing that up and trying to work that short to intermediary route.
Obviously, there's going to be a position coach for Carson Wentz, but I wonder how much Sirianni will be involved in, quote, fixing Carson Wentz himself. But, something that concerns me a little bit is, since he's calling plays for the first time, we'll be creating the offense, a first-time head coach. We saw last year Doug Peterson was a little bit overwhelmed with so much on the table. So if he's going to try and fix Carson Wentz on top of that, is there a concern there?
Well, I mean, I don't want to put the cart before the horse. I mean, it's true that Carson Wentz's name came up in the interviews with candidates. Adam Kaplan was the first to report that. But as Adam said on the podcast this morning, nobody told the coaching candidates that Carson Wentz was definitely going to be on the team. They just wanted to hear what their plan was for him. But to answer your question, Hunter, yeah, I think that whenever you have a rebuild, as the coaches would face here, that would be a concern that you have to put a lot of work into it. And that's why it's important that Nick Sirianni has guys around him that he really trusts to be able to do that. It's not going to be on Nick. It's really going to be about the quarterback's coach, whoever that winds up being, and the offensive coordinator, much like it was about, John DeFilippo and Frank Reich being there for Carson Wentz when he was successful, and Doug Peterson being allowed to capitalize on that and then be a head coach as well. So the responsibility, yes, falls on Nick Sirianni, but the people who are be asked to carry out that job and tasked with the repairing of Carson Wentz or rebuilding of him will have to be those assistant coaches.
We're talking with Geoff Mosher. Football at 4. I don't know if you guys see this tweet from Will Parks. I did see it this morning, actually, that he essentially tweeted out that these receivers in Philly are about to go crazy. I don't know if he's taking a shot at somebody, but for whatever reason, he thinks the Eagles' wide receivers should have been better maybe last year.
Well, I mean, I think we all would have liked to have seen the Eagles' wide receivers be better, at least with Travis Fulgham to, carry over that 4 or 5 game stretch. And of course, with Jalen Reagor, who battled injuries, to be a little bit more on page with the quarterback, because there were opportunities with both quarterbacks and Jalen Reagor, and it just didn't hit. And the weird thing is that Will Park saying that, it's not like he has any experience, to my knowledge, with any of the current Eagles coaches. So maybe he knows something that we don't, but he was in Denver. And Sirianni for a little while was his rival in L.A., so with the Chargers. So I don't know, maybe he saw something in the Chargers offense that he feels like Sirianni, or even the new guy, Shane Steichen. Steichen,
yeah,
will be a part of.
Yeah, Shane Steichen is the new offensive coordinator who, it's funny, if you read a lot of message boards and stuff, the people in L.A. seem like, hey, you take this guy. It didn't seem that he was the most popular guy out there, but we were talking about this before you came on, Mosh. If you're Wentz, you say, hey, I like what I saw from Herbert. Now, Wentz is a little bullish and hard-headed. He might not think this way, but wouldn't you be excited by the fact that, hey, I like what Herbert was able to do with that offense. Let's see if they can bring some of that stuff here.
Yeah, I think you have to give Steichen a fair amount of credit, for a guy who's kind of sort of unknown, and most people didn't know who he was before this coaching search started. But, I mean, the team lost its starting quarterback in a really strange way, Tyrod Taylor, right before a game, right? It wasn't even like a day or two. It was right, I believe, at the day of the game. He got the punctured lung thing from the injection, and in comes Justin Herbert, and all of a sudden there's a new starting quarterback for the Chargers, who was going to eventually be the quarterback, but was not, in the plans at that moment. And then Justin Herbert took over. He seemed to improve every week. He was named Offensive Rookie of the Year. He certainly looked like a very good player. And and the offense, now it wasn't a great offense. I think they were, bottom third. They averaged like 21 points a game. They were maybe not bottom third, bottom half. They weren't an electrifying offense, but I do think you have to give them a little credit for what they did with the quarterback there on the fly.
I do want to get your thoughts on Duce because it's a hot topic around here. Well, what are your thoughts on him going to another organization with the same job and the same exact title? What does that really say about, how it kind of played out here?
Well, when you really want to know how badly a guy wants to get out of a situation, you measure it by the situation he takes. He took a job in Detroit. I mean, my God. That's not exactly a fertile ground for coaches in the last few years. That's where coaches go to die, to be honest with you. So, but look, they do have a new head coach there who has probably got at least a few years to turn it around. And what's his name? I can't. Campbell, right?
Yeah, the WWE superstar, according to his press conference.
Man, Look, Duce is kind of in that same mold, right? I mean, there's going to be a lot of kneecap eating from the head coach down to the assistant head coach. And, those guys can like paint their face and walk out to the WWE ring. They could be the new Road Warriors. So he at least found a situation where A, he was wanted, and B, he definitely fits what the identity of the team is, at least what they're trying to cultivate over there. And let's not forget that the Lions have had this carousel of running backs going on for quite a while. They seem to have settled on a kid in DeAndre Swift, who looks like he's going to be a good one. He's from Philly, so he may have Duce may even know him a little bit. But
there goes Mosh. Football 4, powered by the Inside the Birds podcast. Geoff Mosher, there he goes. He's back. All right, he froze for a second there.
I think that happens when I start talking too much. It's like the monitor. All right, shut up, Geoff.
Limit his answers here. All right, no, a couple of other things that we want to touch on, too, because Jonathan Gannon, the defensive coordinator, highly regarded. There's people that are excited about this. He had some other offers. Obviously, Sirianni knew him, so they had a little bit of an in there. But what do you guys expect to see from him that might be different from what Jim Schwartz did? He got criticized a lot for not blitzing, but the Eagles were third in the league in sacking the quarterback this year. So his philosophy was get pressure with my defensive line. What might we see from Jonathan Gannon?
Well, Adam Kaplan was front on this, saying he got some information from some sources who know the style that Gannon likes to coach with. And he said, one thing you'll probably
No, see, he didn't talk all that much, and he just went away. See, this is the good stuff right here. Now we're missing out.
We got him.
Yeah.
We got him.
Am I back? I apologize for this.
Yeah,
I'm sorry.
What are you going to do? It's 2020, 2021.
Yeah.
We blame that for everything.
Yes, that's fair. So more cover 2, and then apparently more blitzing. So even though the Colts don't blitz a lot, he did spend time with Mike Zimmer in Minnesota, and we know that Mike likes to do those double A gap blitzes with the linebackers. So, and again, maybe he doesn't bring this over. Maybe those are just his influences, but those are two kind of concepts that I think you can look out for with this team. More cover 2 and perhaps more blitzing.
So, that's obviously music to some people's ears, but he's also a defensive back coach. And as somebody put the message up that's watching on the YouTube channel that the Eagles had problem developing wide receivers, defensive backs, they go out and get a guy who was a head coach, worked with wide receivers. Their defensive coordinator worked with defensive backs. So, obviously that's an area where this team has struggled the last couple of years. So you're hoping that Gannon is going to be able to come in here and work with some of these guys that maybe there is more talent to get out of these guys than what they were getting.
I hope so, Mike. I mean, I think the one thing you have to hope for is some continuity here, even if there's some rough patches along the way. And because it's hard to develop players, and I think this has been an issue for the Eagles when you're constantly shuffling coaches in and out of here. We talked about how many wide receivers coaches they've had. They've had a couple of D-backs coaches as well, had a couple of different defensive line coaches. How do you develop talent when you got a different guy and a different mindset trying to coach a position every other year? I think that's very difficult. And that's not on always the head coach. Sometimes if, again, the owner is making a call or if there's pressure from above to get rid of one guy and get another, then that becomes a situation that becomes, pervasive on the whole team. So hopefully, even if there's a little rough first year here, that the coaches are given a chance to kind of develop themselves as they develop their talent. And it's not everybody's got to go as soon as something doesn't go right.
How much do you think the lack of turnovers from the cornerback position, turning their head around, was on Schwartz's system? Like, do you think a new DC coming in here changes that? The fact that these guys would never be able to go up and high point the football and actually, generate a turnover that way?
It's funny, the face
I know.
is frozen on our screen right now.
Are you kidding me, Broads?
Yeah.
I'm actually just pressing a button to screw with you guys. I can be completely fine. No, I think coaching is a big part of it. If you look at the Ravens, their defensive backs are so good at jamming the ball out. I mean, they almost all play like Peanut Tillman, the old Bears cornerback who used to be infamous for stripping the ball away. So I don't know enough about the coaches who are going to be here to say that that's going to happen, but I sure hope that a different viewpoint, a different perspective helps these cornerbacks out and helps them develop, whoever these cornerbacks are going to be.
Hey, Geoff, you guys reported it Inside the Birds that Press Taylor will not be back. I don't know if that's a huge surprise, but he really is the catalyst for all of what's happened. I mean, realistically, Peterson wanted to promote him. That kind of started the domino effect that we now have, and he is not here. I don't know if that's a big surprise, but kind of like looking back at he got hired by Chip Kelly. People forget that. He made it through the Kelly regime, got through to Peterson. Peterson wanted to promote him, and now he's gone. He's only 33 years old, so this guy's been an interesting kind of figure in this organization the last couple of years.
He has been. A lot of people think he's a really bright guy and that he deserves to have a job in an NFL coaching department. Now, maybe Doug Peterson didn't do him any solids by making the quarterbacks coach, because you'll hear that his style of coaching is not aggressive and not as accountable as maybe some others. So maybe the promotions that he was getting were not helping him. Maybe they were helping him financially, but not exactly helping him or the team or putting him in the best situation. So it doesn't surprise me that with the new regime that they're going to have different people. The guy that
See what you did? You put your hand up, and then that stopped him.
Stop doing that, Hunter. Hunter's screwing me up.
Yeah.
Now, Kevin Patullo, the guy who came in from the Colts, is going to basically have that title and position. So there's really no room for Press Taylor here anymore.
Yeah, so Petula's coming over from the Colts with Sirianni, basically taking that role. But, from what you understand and know, I mean, there was a lot of people reporting that he was just not very tough on Carson Wentz. They were kind of friends, right? That kind of prevented him from being hard, and there was a lot of reports that he would call some things out in the film room, and Wentz would kind of blame other people, and that Taylor wouldn't really come back at him.
Yeah, he didn't coach him hard. That's really the bottom line. That's what I heard from a lot of different people. I don't know if they're like best friends or anything, but they are close. And he just did not. He did not press. For lack of a better word, he didn't press Carson the way John DeFilippo did. And so Carson already was kind of a guy who came in from North Dakota State, big man on campus. He needed a guy like DeFilippo who was going to hold him accountable and tell him that, as you know, what doesn't stink all the time, or does stink all the time. But that just wasn't the message that Press Taylor was giving, and because of that, it just became an untenable situation.
So are you surprised that, number one, how do you read, it seems that these are Sirianni's picks?
Yeah, I would think so. I think there's a misconception about the whole puppet thing, and I don't think that coaches were forced on Doug Peterson from the start of his career. He certainly wasn't a guy who knew the league very well, so he needed help. But
where does he live?
Where does he live?
Siberia.
Yeah, right.
Siberia. It's tough out here, man. It's cold. There's no Wi-Fi in Siberia. I moved last month.
Gotcha.
So I was just saying, to me, the measure of whether or not it's a puppet thing, like people say, is whether or not Sirianni's coaches are allowed to stay a year or two, whether he has that continuity, or whether changes are kind of enabled on him immediately after things go wrong.
All right, Geoff Mosher, last one before we let you run here. Are you surprised at all that they didn't go with a more veteran type of guy, bringing in, a more veteran group of, maybe a veteran defensive coordinator instead of going with guys who had no history or background doing it?
Well, one thing we heard about Gannon was he was kind of the rising star defensive assistant who was ready to be a defensive coordinator. And I was told that Jeffrey Lurie knew who Gannon was and thought that would be a great get for the team. So if Sirianni had brought his name up in conversations like, we can get this guy, that probably helped his case in getting the job. So while it is surprising that there are not veterans in the two spots, it does seem like Gannon was a coveted guy who people around the league felt was his time to become a defensive coordinator.
Now, real quick, have you heard, Brosen brought this up before, that it's like an unwritten rule, if you are on Andy Reid's staff, you don't pluck from the staff?
I feel like that's old school. I remember that back in the day. I think he blocked Spagnuolo from interviewing a long time before Spagnuolo got the Giants defensive coordinator job, but I don't know that happens as much anymore.
Because the Colt, it feels like every guy, every shirt, every polo that I've seen is all Colts shirts so far. You got the Chargers, obviously, but they plucked three guys, Sirianni, Gannon, and Petula, all from Indianapolis, and then Steichen is coming from L.A. with the Chargers. So, therefore, you got four new faces, plus Tracy Rucker, I guess, will be the defensive line coach.
Isn't this kind of weird to spitball these names back and forth? We don't even know some of them. Who's this guy? Who's that? It feels like we are just in such a weird territory here with the Eagles.
Yeah, it's like when you go to your favorite establishment, but it got bought by somebody new, and now that place just feels a little different when you walk in. The new owner wants to
I'm
hey,
picturing
welcome to the spot.
Yeah.
Dude, I've been coming here for 20 years.
Yeah, I'm picturing a diner that got bought by someone else. They changed their name, their menu's different. It's what am I doing here?
No, they kept the same name of the place.
They go same name.
Yeah, it's everything's the same. They just got a new owner, and the owner's like, hey, thanks for coming in. It's dude, I've been coming here for 20 years. Don't give me this whole, That's how it feels.
Yeah, but then all of a sudden it plays mind tricks with you. The soup isn't as good as it used to be, or the chicken just tastes a little funnier now.
Yep. Hey, little tweaks, little changes. Geoff Mosher, Inside the Birds podcast. Make sure you listen to the latest edition of the Inside the Birds podcast. Get some more intel on the new head coach, Nick Sirianni. Also, take a look at the coordinators, the futures of some of these other guys, and the coaching staff changes. It's all at the Inside the Birds podcast, which drops Mondays, Wednesdays, Fridays at 6 a.m. And, of course, every day on Football at 4. All right, Moshe, get better Wi-Fi, would you?
I'll try. Thanks, guys. Have a good one.
He, like all guests, appeared via the Boardwalk Honda hotline. There you go. Geoff Mosher, of course, Football at 4. It's brought to you by Dr. Lyle M. Back for everything from skincare to cosmetic surgery. Go to ilovelylback.com.